You are now listening to the Dual Position Podcast.
The boys are back to talk all things SuperCoach all season long.
Please welcome your hosts, Whisperer and Brew.
The mighty Melbourne Storm lost a few players this year, brought a couple in, more leaving at the end of next year. Seems to be a big turnover happening in Melbourne, and what's the future of Craig Bellamy looking like? Not a bad time to be a Roosters fan. I'm joined by one of them today in Brew SC. How are we going, mate?
Going very good, Josh. I'm ready to talk about one of the best sides in the competition.
One of the best sides in the competition for the past 23 years.
20 years.
Yeah, it's getting a bit much, but every year we say, is this the year Melbourne fall off? And it's never the case, and I don't see it happening next year as well. Unfortunately, for people that like watching Melbourne not do so well, I've got them in second for this season. We'll have to maybe look at that, but at the moment I've got them in second. Where do you have them sitting, mate?
I've got them finishing in third, so I think there might be a wee little bit of regression, but nothing too substantial. I think it's more that the Roosters should, with their troops back, just gain a lot more than, say, Melbourne. Therefore, I've got the Chookies moving into the top two, and I've got the Storm dropping down to third.
Won't give away my prediction, but I also have the Chooks in the top two, so you can put two and two together and work out where I have the Panthers. Look, last year the Storm finished 21-3. They finished first with the minor premiership. Not too much can be better with the season that they had, going 11-2 at home, 10-3 away. Look, they averaged 34 points a game. They conceded 13 points a game. Astronomical difference there. Winning by nearly 21 points a game on average. Finished first in attack, second in defense. I don't really see that changing a whole lot. Nothing worries me too much about the ins and outs that really affect their ability to score points. I think it's very much a system-based side, and you can put anyone in there and they'll still continue to put up points. I don't see it being 34 points a game with how you and I are thinking how these rules are going to change, but they will still be one or two when it comes to attack.
In my humble opinion, I thought the Melbourne Storm were the best side in the competition last year. Probably should have won the comp last season, but that said, I thought Penrith were the best side in the comp the year before, and that they should have won that comp, so it kind of just evened out. But Melbourne were phenomenal last year. I don't think they'll drop off too much. I just think that Penrith haven't had a great deal of change. They should, that machine should keep rolling on, and I think the Chooks have been there or thereabouts, obviously back-to-back premierships going into the last two seasons, with some troops coming back and some nice, good kids coming through. I think it's going to be a real hot battle, the top 4 or 5 places this year.
Definitely a class of the top 3, and then the rest with the Roosters fully fit, Penrith and Melbourne. Look, Melbourne have had quite a few games. They've had quite a few losses, and then 2023 is mounting up to be a few losses for them as well. They've brought in Xavier Coates from the Broncos. They brought in Nick Meaney from the Bulldogs, Josh King from the Knights, Jaden Nikorima from the Redcliffe. Are they the Dolphins in reserve grade? I just know they're the Redcliffe. And William Warbrick from Rugby Union. They're the ins. The outs, they've got Adokar and Max King exiting to Canterbury. Dale Finucane and Nico Hines exiting to Cronulla. Aaron Penne to the Warriors. Brenko Lee to the Broncos. Aaron Booth to the Titans. Riley Jacks to the B&E Tigers. I'm assuming that's in the QRL. Isaac Lumi, Daniel Atkinson, Turahui, Tyson Smoothie all have been released. Also worth noting, Felice Kafusi, Jesse Bromwich, Kenny Bromwich, Brandon Smith all exiting. The first 3 obviously going to the Dolphins in 2023, with Brandon Smith off to your Chookies as well. So yeah, pretty ideal. When it comes to suspensions, they are hit pretty hard for the first round. They've got
Definitely
Harry Grant, Cameron Munster, Chris Lewis, Brandon Smith all suspended for a game. Munster, Lewis and Cheese were obviously caught up in the mishap with the postseason celebrations, and Harry Grant has picked up a 1-game suspension from that final against the Penrith Panthers. And Tui Kamakamika is stood down indefinitely. Nelson Asafa-Solomona came back to training this week. I don't know what I know what his stance is on vaccinations. I don't know whether he is vaccinated or not. I have read some reports that he's been given an exemption. I've read some reports that he's been vaccinated, so I'm not too confident to make my stance known on what he's going to do, but all I know is he's back training, so he either has to be vaccinated or has an exemption, because the way the Victorian rules are that you can't be in a team training facility without one of those two. So keep your ear to the ground. We'll make a note on both of those going forward. When it comes to the ins and outs, mate, Coates, Meaney, King, Nikorima, and Warbrick, it's headlined by Xavier Coates, but I think the Nick Meaney signing has gone under the radar a little bit as well.
Nick Meaney in that system could be a very, very good player. You got to understand he's been coming from one of the worst sides in the comp over the last couple of years. He's moving into a proven system where mediocre, and I don't want to say it in a negative way, but like mediocre type players have gone there and become stars. Nick Meaney could very well be the next person in a long list to do that.
I have a very interesting stat on Nick Meaney to pull up when we talk about the teams, and it might shock some people. But obviously Xavier Coates, he's headlining this, I guess, incumbent class. Much hype around him, and his SuperCoach stocks will come to him. William Warbrick coming from rugby union, we don't know a whole lot on. Jaden Nikorima, one of these guys that is full of potential, and hopefully we can see it be put together at the Melbourne Storm. And Josh King is training the house down, in quotation marks, coming from Newcastle, who showed a lot of promise for them as well. With the losses, I mean, it's it is headlined by Addo Carfanuka and Hines. Do we think that Hines is that big of a loss when they've got Hughes, Munster, and Pappenhausen?
He's a coverable loss. Like I would say he's the biggest loss, but at the same time, when you've got that kind of spine and, you know, you've got two world-class fullbacks and two world-class hookers, you can kind of afford to let that go. And understandably, they didn't hold him down and they let him do that. So whilst I think he is the biggest loss, Melbourne won't suffer too much from letting him go.
He's the biggest name loss, but probably not the biggest system loss. Dale Finucane does a job. He's sort of going over the hill a little bit now, but I think he'll provide a lot of experience and a lot of leadership at Cronulla. I don't think Melbourne are too sad to see him go, but you can understand why they haven't resigned him, similar to why they haven't really chased after Kaufusi, Bromwich, and the other Bromwich as well. And Addo Carr, Origin winger, Australian winger, very, very good for Melbourne in the last couple of years. I think he scored in 82% of all the games that he's played. So it'll be a case of, Addo Carr out, Coates in. How big is the drop-off there, do we think, when it comes to Addo Carr to Coates?
Short term, definitely there's a drop-off, but long term, I think they'll be right. With Xavier Coates, he's a very, very good player, and I'm sure we're going to start seeing the best of him. I think Addo Carr also is a big loss for what he brings to team harmony and culture. We all know he's a bit of a prankster and a jokester, but from what I've heard, he's a very good bloke and he's a very good teammate. So I think they might lose out a little bit there on top of what they'll obviously lose on the field.
Is it fair to say all of these losses, including Kaufusi and the two Bromwich brothers, are losses Melbourne were happy to have apart from Brandon Smith? Brandon Smith probably being the only one that they did desperately try and keep.
Yeah, look, in hindsight, I'm sure they would have loved to have kept Smith with these now losses, but Melbourne's got a really good core of players. They've got a really good system. So if you're going to let some 30 plus in age, back rowers, front rowers move on, there's nothing wrong with that. It's understandable. They're obviously coming to the back ends of their careers. They can probably leave the club, maybe earn a few extra dollars, maybe make a difference in the Dolphins getting off the ground. So I understand why Melbourne would be allowing these players to move on, sure.
Let's have a look at our round 1/round 2 sides. I've listed my round 2 side, but I have made note of the suspensions that we have. Off the top of your head, is there a better SuperCoach spine than the Melbourne spine?
No.
Yeah, I just can't see anyone competing with them on a SuperCoach front. I'm not going to come out and say they're the best spine in the NRL. But
next season, when the Roosters have Brendan Smith, maybe. But right now, it's Melbourne easily the best spine in the comp.
So as we touched on, Grant, Munster, Lewis, Cheese, and Tui are all out for round 1. So those guys will feature in my 17, but I will make a note of who I think comes in and replaces them. At fullback, no prizes for guessing it's Ryan Pappenhausen. A low of 71 in 80-minute games. And that was against Parramatta, and then his next lowest score was 73, also against Parramatta. He had an 80-minute average brew of 115.7 last year. So you take out the games off the bench and the games where he got injured, 115.7. This is why I am keen on Pap pushing Turbo to be that number 1 fullback this year.
Completely agree with you. Plays for a top side. On top of that, Turbo might have more individual points in him, but Pappenhausen negates that somewhat by having goal kicking. If Melbourne go out and score 50 or 60 points, which for the last decade we've seen them do regularly throughout the season, you can add on a bucket load of points there. So definitely, Pappenhausen is the one guy in my side that I've never blinked at even looking at the option of getting rid of. Like if I was going to take Turbo in round 1, I'd be dropping Teddy. I would not be dropping Paps. He's easily the number 2 for me now. And I'm expecting an extremely big year this year. I'm actually excited to watch him play.
Yeah, very, very keen to see Pap in full flight. I'm just hoping that we can get through the season, obviously, unscathed. And yeah, I'd love to see him play. As a Queensland fan, I'm scared to see him play Origin, but I'd love to see him get a crack, even in like a utility role. When it comes to the wingers, one of them picks themselves in Xavier Coates. He hasn't been brought in to sit on the pine. And the other one's up for debate between 3 guys in George Jennings, Dean Aramia, and Nick Meaney. I have leaned on George Jennings, but Nick Meaney has found a spot in my 17 as well. Who are your wingers, mate?
So I've got Xavier Coates, obviously. However, I have Coates playing on the left wing. I know a lot of the research I did previously when I was, banging this guy around a little bit was based on him playing on the right wing. When I drew up the 17, I realised that I actually think he'll probably replace Addo-Carr on the left. I've partnered him with Nick Meaney. I think they might give him first crack at the right wing, I believe. So I've got Coates and Meaney. And Meaney, I'm not actually sure. I haven't looked into Meaney's price or anything like that. But if Meaney were to be there named in round 1 and he was at a decent dollar amount, I'd certainly look into that option.
Nick Meaney's 447k, so pretty awkward price.
Yeah.
Look, I've got Nick Meaney as my 14, similar to how they played, similar to how they played Hines. Very interesting to note, though, Nick Meaney averaged more points a game in a really, really bad Bulldog side than Xavier Coates did in an okay, or a slightly better Broncos side. Coates averaged 40, Meaney averaged 42.5 at wing. So that's something to note. Look, Coates is one of these guys you're going to have to play matchup based. I don't think he's a guy that you can confidently start week in, week out. And then that begs the question, is 360k too expensive for a guy to be riding your pine half the time? Look, the biggest wing base when it comes to Melbourne last year was George Jennings with 26. Addo-Carr had a base of 20. Lumi had a base of 20. And Vunivalu in 2020 had a base of 18. And Aramea had a base of 20 as well. Coates was only 18, so he is probably the poorest out of that batch. Addo-Carr scored 82% of tries in all his games played. And he only averaged 60 once. He was a perennial 50 to 52 point scorer. Coates will go on runs though. So Addo-Carr, we know that he would go on 5-week runs of where he would score 6-7 tries in 4 weeks. Coates, I think, will do that as well. But you just got to pick your time. I've got him projected around 47 to 53 points a game. So there's definitely the case of 10 points of value. But it's very much Jason Saab territory for me.
Look, I do have him listed as my trap. I couldn't not put him after the trap after the smackdown I laid on him a few weeks ago. But I will say this. I come from a very stats-based decision-making process. Other people will just trust their gut. If your gut's saying that, you think that this person is going to take his game to the next level, increase his base, score a lot of tries, and you want to take him for 350, I'm not actually going to knock anyone for doing that. Outside of Hines this season, most of my decisions have been statistically based. But Hines for me, and I've been arguing it for now months, I feels like my gut call is that he is going to go to a new level and that he is a much better player than what people think he is in the halves. So I'm backing that call. So if anyone had similar feelings about Coates, I don't blame them.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying Coates is going to flop. I'm just simply looking at Melbourne Storm and the wingers and what Bellamy asked them to do. So people can say that Coates is a big body. Bellamy will get him to do a lot of work. But we can see that like Vunivalu, Addo-Carr, Jennings, Aramea, and Lumi in the last 24 months haven't been asked to do big work. So I don't really see why that changes, and that's just my opinion looking off historical data. He could come out and have Brighton Toto levels of numbers, but I just don't really see it happening in a Bellamy system. As for Nick Meaney, as I said, he's not in my starting 13, but he's in my 17. He averaged 42.5 in an awful Bulldog side which is a better average of Coates. I've also put here one injury to Pappenhausen, and we could be on here. We could be on for big times. Is he a Hines 2.0 at 470k or whatever he is? Time will tell. But yeah, one injury to Pap, you would expect that Meany goes to fullback, and we could be on again. Do you agree? If Pappenhausen goes down, Meany goes to fullback, and we could be on.
Not too sure if they've got another superstar stud coming through in their top 30. Because, God, they've had a lot over the last 5 or 6 seasons.
They've still got 2 top fullbacks in their side in Munster and Hughes who could come in and kill it for any other club.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you're probably right. In the instance of a Pappenhausen injury or concussion, Meany probably would be the guy. Price-wise, look, if we knew that Paps was going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, then, that price I'd jump on.
Available.
If it was only a 1 to 2 weeks, I don't know. I did with Hines straight away last year. I looked into the situation and said that's not a 1 to 2 week injury. It was being reported that it was. I thought it was always going to be at least 3 or 4 weeks. And I thought, I might get one or two big price rises out of Hines. And as it turned out, it just ended up being, I'm going to hold this guy for pretty much the entire season, and it worked in my favour. So I wouldn't hate it, but I would hate it as a Pappenhausen owner.
Very jealous of you Hines owners. I never jumped on last year because, Pat was only out for 1 to 2 weeks. Pap came back. Munster got injured. And then when Munster came back, Pap got injured. So Hines had this magical run. I never jumped on, and that's probably what killed me. But Nick Meany available at fullback, centre wing. If anything happens to Pappenhausen, I'm probably going to jump on straight away because we saw what Hines did as well. And I think Nick Meany is a very talented football player who could do something similar. In the centre spots, pretty sure they picked themselves in Justin Olam and Remus Smith. I don't see that changing next year.
No, I've got the same combo. Olam at times was borderline, moving towards being a SuperCoach weapon. It's just he's always been quite inconsistent. So he's not the type of player I typically like to pick. Remus Smith was fantastic for them at an NRL level. And if Meany does go outside him, there's a bit of an old Bulldogs connection out there. So maybe they might have something up their sleeves, but I think those two centers speak for themselves. I'm not expecting anything else come TLT than those two names.
Josh Adokar, I think, scored 26 tries last year in the whole entire season, including finals. I mean, Justin Olam was inside of him feeding balls, historical season, still in the average 56, and you're getting him at a sky-high price. It's a big pass for me. As for Remus Smith, look, he had a big uptick from 2019 and 2020, averaging 37 in both those years to a really nice 51 last year. Can he improve on 51? I don't think he does. And at 449k, I'd much prefer to take a guy like Staggs, who has that 60-point upside, whereas Remus only scored 51 last year. The upside for Remus is he seems to be pretty consistent, always there or thereabouts, and didn't really suffer a whole lot of setbacks last year. So if you want stability, you can look at Remus and try and take the upside, but at 449k, it's a bit of an awkward price to be taking a punt on. And I've also got George Jennings listed here as well. He was best when it comes to Melbourne base, like pure base, but at 474k, I'd much rather go Coates. If you were choosing between a Melbourne winger, save the 110k and just go Xavier Coates. The halves, Munster, Hughes, steady hands when it comes to SuperCoach stocks. Munster, I've put in here brackets Cooper Johns because I think that's who will replace him for round 1. So
I've got the same.
Probably be a Cooper Johns and Jerome Hughes halves pairing for round 1, but Cameron Munster and Jerome Hughes will be long term. Munster is a certified stud and would be mass owned if he was fit for round 1. We talk about the 5'8" position a whole lot differently this year, I feel. But the fact that he's not, bit of a hot take. I've put here, if you're not going Harry Grant, I feel like Cam Munster is a must-have, because if you're not going to go Harry Grant, then you can just hold Munster for a week. Would you agree, or would you still be put off by the 1-round suspension?
I don't hate it by any means. I wouldn't say must-have. I hate that term, must-have. The only must-have is Tom Trbojevic at some point. Munster's in for a big season. I think given that we believe he's off the booze and behaving himself, and he looks fit and firing to come and
he looks very good.
Yeah, he's looking lean. People are saying he looks bigger. I think he looks lean, like he's fit. He's dropped a bit of beer weight and stuff like that. So he's looking quite cut. I think he will probably come out and have a banger of a season. I don't think he's going to, average 90 plus or anything like that, but I could see a 5-point uptick in his average, and he already was a gun. 5'8's one of those positions I'm finding extremely difficult this year. I really wish that Hines was dual half and not half fullback. It would make my life a lot simpler, but I don't hate the Munster shout, like carrying him on the bench. It's just you're probably going to have to play, say, Ilias or, say, Hastings, I'd say, for the first week.
Yeah, I've gone very cheap in 5'8 at the moment. I've got Hastings and Amone, so I have gone very, very cheap in the 5'8 position. Have you read my notes, mate? Because I've put here extremely consistent, 5-point uptick, 80 average, question mark, no drink, no punt. And I've also put, for a very quiet year last year, he still had 1 try involvement per game. So I think he had 7 tries, 13 try assists in 20 games. So yeah, one involvement per game. I really like Munster this year. I know that in a pod you and I did with Tom Fig Jam and Ryan from SuperCoach 365, I said that, is this what we're seeing from Munster? And I think it is. I don't really see Munster going to that Cleary levels of elite when it comes to SuperCoach, but he's definitely always going to be around that 70 to 80 point average, and we could be on the higher side of things next year just with how good he's looking, and if we can take the no drink, no punt statement seriously, and if he's off that for the whole year, Munster could be anything. And if he's trying to play for a big contract up in Redcliffe, then yeah, who knows? As for Jerome Hughes, you and I have had our disagreements on the Nicho Hynes debate. I am Team Hughes over Team Hynes personally. Look, the thing is, who's going to make more money out of Hynes and Hughes? Hynes. Who's going to score more points out of Hynes and Hughes? Hynes. Who's going to score way less and could burn you more? And that's the reason why I'm going for Hughes. I feel like Hughes has the higher ceiling compared to someone like a Nicho Hynes, and we've seen him do it. He did it last year. He's not going to be playing Origin, and he's really found his feet at halfback. I think his evolution as a controlling 7 and someone that can create for himself has really been good to see. As we said, he could play fullback for 10 other clubs and would be their first choice, I would say. So it's been really nice to see his transition into a 7, and to a really, really good 7 as well. And I like the fact that he can create for himself, but he's also got some really attacking weapons out there. Seen a few sides with Hughes in them, and it's hard to talk people off him.
Look, he's playing round 1, and even if having some stars missing around him maybe means that he scores less in round 1 than what he would if he had all of Munster and Grant and co playing, it's a long-term game, and you'll take a small hit. I like the Hughes pick. I do. I just prefer the Nicho one. In terms of that ceiling comment, man, you're talking about a goal-kicking half and a non-goal kicking half, and you're saying that Hughes easily has the highest ceiling.
No,
Hynes doesn't have the level of superstars beside him. That's nuts, man.
No, I'm saying Hynes can go bigger than Hughes, but Hynes can also go a lot lower than Hughes, I feel, because we've seen Hughes do it, and we're taking a blind punt on Hynes. If you're looking for a 130-point game, I'd be going for Hynes. If you're going for overall consistency, I feel like Hughes is the right play. And you mentioned their draw, mate. You mentioned what they're coming into. They've got the Tigers away from home round 1, South at home round 2, Parramatta at home round 3, the Dogs at home round 4, and the Raiders away in round 5. So pretty much...
Not the easiest start.
It's not the easiest start, but you'd think they'd just stay in Sydney for a month. Do you think they'd go back to Melbourne playing... Sorry, my bad. I've read that wrong. Never mind. They play the Tigers away, South at home, Parrot at home, Dogs at home. So they're going to get probably a 3.5 week stretch just in Melbourne. So that could be better for them, considering they've been away from home for so long.
They'll fire up at home.
Yeah.
They haven't played there for ages. They'll get a big crowd there too. So they'll be ready for South in round 2. That could be an ambush with their players back.
Especially if South...
How they go round 1, who knows? I still think the Tigers are going to be a steaming pile of, this season, and new combinations all over the place. So Melbourne could still come out and put a number on them round 1, even missing their stars.
Yeah, not enough. I'm not confident enough to captain Pappenhausen round 1. That's still looking like Tedesco against the Knights on a Sunday arvo at the SCG.
I just like that that's a 3 p.m. game too.
Yeah.
I really wish I could go Paps, because I still feel like they'll do the business. But the Chooks love the SCG. And they certainly love the SCG in daytime. So if that's a dry game, we could have another, 160 to start the season from Teddy this season like we did last year.
Let's hope so. So Munster Hughes as our 6 and 7, no surprise, with Cooper Johns, Brew and I believing will fill in for round 1.
Yep.
When it comes to their middles, look, I've got Harry Grant, picked himself, Jesse Bromwich, Kenny Bromwich, and Christian Welch.
Wait, no, that can't be right.
What do you mean?
The two props, 8 and 10.
Yeah, with Welch.
You got Kenny.
No,
Bromwich.
I meant Jesse. So Jesse,
Yeah,
Jesse,
okay.
Jesse and Welch with Grant in the middle, and I've also got Jaden Nikorima as the round 1 selection when it comes to hooker for Harry Grant.
I do too.
For some reason, I have stopped my notes on Welch. I've just decided to not write them. But from what I know, like, does he get enough? I was very keen on him before Nelson Asfa-Solomona came back. And if you're gonna go Welch, you need to sell him round 10, round 11, because over Origin, Bellamy loves to rest him and get him prepped for the end of the season. So Welch is someone that you need to move on just before Origin. As for Bromwich, on the surface of things, 339k is enticing, but the minutes are going down year on year, as well as the PPM. He's older, on the way out. It's a big miss for me. Harry Grant, though, he is my boy, my man crush, my stud, my everything. I was on the Harry Grant must-have movement since November, even though he was out round 1. He is the clear hooker by far, in my opinion. As I put here in brackets, my man crush. He's Australia's best 9. He's Queensland's best 9. He's Melbourne's number 9. Don't give me this Brandon Smith rubbish. Even as a Roosters fan, Brew will agree that Harry Grant is the far superior hooker. And when it comes to SuperCoach, man, 74 average in 59 minutes last year, and even in a horrible Tigers side, 71 average in 74 minutes. He is a weapon. He needs to stay on the park. That is the only thing. Expect 75 average, pushing up to 85, I would say.
Yeah, he'll be a stud this year. He should definitely finish first, but that's not to say that, a Damien Cook or someone, if they come out and show their form of old, that they couldn't challenge him. But in terms of pure skill and what he can create and what he's done with his work rate in small minutes last year, and obviously in his debut season, we saw what a stud he was playing big minutes for the Tigers. You're going to want to get him pretty quickly, no doubt about that.
I was getting visibly triggered when people were saying that Brandon Smith is the better 9 last year. And I'll touch on Cheese. He definitely has his pros, but he's got his cons as well. But for me, Grant is just clearing away the best hooker in the world, and it isn't close in my opinion. Do you have the same front row, mate? Bromwich, Grant, and Welch?
I do, yes.
Yes, I would suspect we had that, and I suspect we have similar back rowers as well in Kafusi and the other Brom.
Going back to Christian Welch, I ran some numbers whilst you were, God knows what you were doing whilst you were talking about Harry Grant.
My desk raised an inch off the ground as we were talking about Harry Grant.
His cat's moved out. He actually averaged 63 over the first 11 games. So as you spoke about, he did fall off a cliff after Origin. He played a lot of 14 during that period. And then at the back end of the season, he went back into the number 10. He didn't play around 12, 13, 14. Then he came back to 14 for 2 games missed another week. Then he finished the season off strong with some pretty good numbers. But yeah, 63 average, it's not the worst by any means. And if he needed an uptick in his work rate or potentially his minutes, because his minutes are only 52 average. So even if he needed to, say, tick that up by 3, generally has a good, say, 1 to 1.2 ppm. You're talking about a guy that could average 65 plus. So not the worst shout there by you, Josh. I hadn't actually looked too deep into that, but yeah, that's not bad. I don't mind that.
The only thing is, I'm looking for upside. I don't feel there is much upside with Welch, but he's a safe set of hands. He's 520k for 500.
I try to balance the upside, but so for example, we got a bit giddy on the show talking about Fafita the other day. If I'm paying up that much money for a Fafita and it means that I then need to carry, say, a Welsh, I'm not too worried about the enormous upside as long as they're plugging me out 55 to 65 per week. I don't feel like it's going to burn me because it's offset by how much Fafita can burn non-owners, given that he can score 160 points.
My point being, Welch is 520k with very limited upside. Adam Van-Blake is 505k with a mountain of upside, a 70-point upside, I would say. And that's the reason why I would lean more to a guy like AFB over someone like a Welch, just how I play. But if you're looking for a guy who is going to be very boring, but at the end of the game, you look down and see a 60 game, then Welch is your guy because he isn't exciting, but he loves to get an arm free, loves to throw an offload. He's a leader in this Melbourne pack, and he won't let you down. especially.
So he's Aiden Tolman 2.0.
He's Aiden Tolman 2.0. But
he did score a ton last year, Christian Welch.
He did.
And an 85 and
but
a couple of 70s.
The thing is, you need to sell him before round 11, round 12, when Origin sets in, because Bellamy loves to rest him and prep him for the end of the season.
And that's not something typically I want to be doing going into buys either. I don't want to know that I'm going to have to get rid of a guy when I'm already trying to build numbers for the round 13 buy.
Exactly. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We touched on the back rowers in Felice Kafusi and the other Bromwich. I'm assuming you'd have the same back row. I'd be surprised if you didn't.
I got, Felice Kafusi and Kenny Bromwich.
Awesome. Kafusi's a really awkward price for a guy whose heyday is behind him and on the way out. Do they blood Howarth? ? And that's the only stats I've got on him, because quite frankly, this is my reaction when it comes to Kafusi.
Look, I wasn't expecting that. Kafusi's he's not who he used to be. He's definitely got some big games in him from time to time if he gets a couple of pies and whatnot, but he's also going to dish you out some 30s and some 45s. And if you go through and look at his stats from last year, there was quite a few of those. So he's not really for me. 43 base isn't shocking, but there's not a whole lot of creative upside anymore. Like 2018, 60 plus average. And then he's gone 46, 50, 53. It's not very appealing to me when, he's going to be leaving the club.
Yeah, you could make a case for him if he wasn't leaving, but the fact that he's on the way out doesn't entice me. The same with Kenny Bromwich, extremely poor PPM, moving on from the club. Oh, let's just leave it at that. Look, at the 13 position, I have here Tepai Moeroa. That is for round 1 only. Moving forward, it'd be Brandon Smith, we expect. The appeal of Cheese is his close to the line ability from hooker. At 13, I just don't see the upside there. After a huge outlier season, which was a 10-point increase, I feel it can only go backwards from here. New team next year. How committed is he? There was reports that Melbourne were looking to move him on because of how this was all handled. I don't see any value in Brandon Smith whatsoever.
Look, Kenny Bromwich, I wouldn't even look at, to be honest with you. But Brandon Smith, I've actually got him listed as one of my X factors. I think come round 2, he'll have the 13 jersey. I think he'll play pretty solid minutes. And I know that moving out of hooker means that he might not get as many opportunities to burrow the quick try like he did so many times last year. But I think you're probably going to see more of Grant and Cheese on the field at the same time. Now we know that Grant loves a run from dummy half. If that happens, I'd say Brandon Smith's going to be the guy that's going to be following the ruck. So I still think there's going to be some opportunities that he gets similar types of tries. I don't think he's going to have a season like last year. I think that was a phenomenal season. But I don't think the drop-off's going to be quite as big as what people think. And I certainly don't think Bellamy's going to, inverted commas, punish this bloke because he's leaving the club. If he does, maybe that would be early and give him some 14 time. But I think once Melbourne get rocking and rolling, their best side's going to get picked. And Brandon Smith is in their best 13 when they do that. So I think at some point in time, he's going to be a real X-factor pickup. So I dispute what you're saying about Cheese a little bit.
I don't have him being punished. I have him starting and playing okay minutes. I think he averaged 68 last year. I just see that coming back to around 60-ish or so. So 8 points of loss there. I feel like he could be a bit of a trap. The best case for Supercoaches is, though, he plays 14, plays 20 minutes a game, and he comes in next year at like a really, really juicy price to pick him up at the Roosters. That is the dream. I've got Cheese as a trap. You've got him as an X factor. I just feel like there's an 8-point drop-off coming back to around 60 points a game. Similar to my thoughts on Hines.
Just before you move on, I also have Tepai Moeroa playing 13 in week 1 when Smith's out there. I've also got Moeroa listed as an X factor, and that is purely because I did say that if there were to be a situation where Grant becomes the club's 14 instead of 13 and they do start to forward plan a little bit, I think Moeroa would be the fella that would pick up that lock position.
Yeah.
And simply by that logic, that's why I've listed him also with Cheese as the Moeroa. It just depends on how they play out the situation and whether it's they pick their best 17, in which case it's Smith, or whether it's they start to future plan a little bit and go, who's going to replace Smith next season.
Yeah, I've got Moeroa as first lock off the bench. At 14, I have Nick Meaney, just in that Hines similar role. 42.5 average on the wing. At fullback, he was pretty good as well, so definitely can fill a role. Probably can play some 6 if need be. Yeah, we could be on same points I made before. If an injury to Pappenhausen goes down, we could be on. Who is your 14?
My 14's Jaden Nikorima. I think he's going to get a spot. I think it's probably good for him. He can play a bit of hooker. If Grant needs a rest, he can certainly fill in the halves. And, you know, if you needed to slot him in centre for half a game in case of mass injury or something, I'm sure he could fill that void as well. So I've got Nikorima as the club's 14 for this season.
At my 15, I have Tepai Moeroa in my full strength side. Come round 1, I have Josh King. So Tepai Moeroa jumped from 0.8 ppm in 2017, gradually climbing up to a 1.1 ppm. Granted, that was with low mins, so take with that what you will. I expect him to play around 30-35 minutes a game, so that could be 40-42 points a game. He'll be a slow burn, but with 0 front row forward cheapies, he might be one of the only options that we have. Don't expect the world from him, but he is 26, so hitting his peak as a middle. You've got Moeroa on the bench, I'm assuming. Who do you have as his replacement when he comes in to start in your side?
Yeah, look, I'm not too sure. There's a few guys. There's Horwath, there's King, there's a few guys. I don't know what to expect when it comes to bench players come round 1. For the starters, I did do the backups, but for the bench, I didn't really mention who replaces round 1. I just went with the 4 guys and then the 18th man, who I thought would be regulars this season.
Sounds good. I've just got Josh King coming in for the bench in game 1. New inclusion to my 17, Big Nelson Asfa Solomona. Averages of 53, 54, 53 in the last 3 years. I really don't see that changing. Bellamy loves to use him as an impact player. 6'6", 120 kilos off the bench. Not a bad bloke to have come on when the middles get tired. You can bring Nas on and absolutely tear up the house. Off to rugby union next year, so don't expect any kind of huge uptick in production or anything. He'll be around that 53, 54 points a game. Maybe Bellamy prefers him over Moeroa for round 1, but I just know that Bellamy loves to use his impact off the bench. So Nelson has come onto my bench with the news of him being back at training.
Yeah, Nelson makes my side, obviously. He's, as you said, he's 6'6" and he's a wrecking ball. And despite the fact that he's leaving the club and obviously the vax status stuff, if he's available for them, he makes their top 17. I've got him playing off the bench this season, though.
And I really didn't know who to put for 17th man, so I've just whacked in the mascot of the Eisenhuth last year. That is Eisenhuth. Last year he was who I named my team after, and that's all I've got to say on him because I've got no idea who's playing 17 for the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, so doing my full bench, I had Nikorima, Tom Eisenhuth, Nelson Asafa Solomona, Tepai Moeroa. With Jack Horwath as my 18th man. I think he'll be the first guy that might find his way coming into that side. The unfortunate thing about this 17 is that it actually doesn't provide us with much in the way of cheapies. I don't want to fall into a trap situation where I see a name listed on TLT and then they're not there the next week. Moeroa is probably the only guy that I can actually see being in there as when they are at full strength. So a little disappointing. It would be nice if we got a Horwath or someone like that come around and help us because it is getting a bit tricky. Piakura is obviously suspended round 1 for the Broncos and he's doubtful, I think, to make full strength 17. So it's getting a bit hard on the cheapie front up in the forwards.
I don't know about that, to be honest, because the news out of Red Hill was they did the old 13 on 13 and Piakura was training ahead of TC Rabadi, so there could be a bench spot for Piakura. Time will...
That's from round 2, but so you are going to go blind into the season and taking hope that he ends up in the 17. I think most will probably do it anyway, but there is risk there.
In my side, it was him or Burbo, so I'll probably start with Piakura just if I'm going to take a punt on one of them. I've got 6...
always take Burbo.
I've got 6 cheapies on this list here. One of them is relevant. The other 5 you'll have to keep an eye out on, and I've listed them in order. With Tepai Moeroa obviously being the number 1 cheapie with 205k. I've then got Josh King listed as my cheapie number 2 at 255k. I've got Nikorima as my cheapie 3 with what Brew was saying. Cheapie 4, I've got Jack Howarth at 175k. I've then got Tyrant Wishart at 175k as well. And then I've got William Warbricks as well as 205k. The last 5 of that list that isn't named Tepai Moeroa. Chuck them in your black book. Keep an eye out for them because a few injuries, and they'll definitely get their chance.
I can see Wishart being there as the 14 in week 1. I'm really high on Josh King. I really hope that he does find his way in that squad.
Melbourne are keen on him as well.
Know when that will be.
Yeah, Melbourne are keen as well apparently on him. Apparently, yeah, just he got the preseason effort award. Like, he's a bloke that was just putting in day out, and we saw a fair bit of him at Newcastle last year, and the job that he did he did well. So don't be surprised to see him get a run of games over the season, probably during Origin.
Yeah, it would be good. Like, if they, like, Eisenhuth's decent enough, but like if he dropped out at 17, and let's say Brandon Smith did play the role of 14 this season, and you take out Nicarima, it does open a few spots. So fingers crossed that TLT shows us something. I'm hoping we get some cheapies out of the Storm. I know we probably will next year, regardless. There'll
be a fair bit of turnover at the Storm next year. What have we got? We've got 2 back row spots. We've got a front row forward spot. We've got a 13 spot. So there is a fair bit at Melbourne happening next year, but focusing on 2022, Melbourne Storm's fan, I don't think you're going to be in for a tough year. I've got them in second. Brew's got them in third. Pretty much a consensus top 4 side, and should make a deep run into the finals. Really excited to see how the spine goes in the 1, 6, 7, and 9. Definitely excited about that number 9 jersey because I just want Harry Grant to play 19, 20 games this season and be an absolute weapon. That's going to be everything for the Melbourne Storm today, mate. I very much thank you for coming on. And, give yourself a plug. Where can we find you and the work that you do?
Most of it's on Twitter at BrewSC22. I do jump on under my normal name on Facebook and try and respond to questions as much as I can on your artworks.
My artworks, that's a stretch to call them artworks.
I had a mental blank as to what to call them, your posts.
I've been the SC Whisperer. You've been listening to the Dual Position Podcast. Leave a review on Apple and Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that red button down below, make it grey, give us a thumbs up. A lot of good reception to the post recently. So we are, nearly halfway through these team previews, and we've only got, what have we got? A month and a bit away till footy, and the trials are very, very soon as well. So
trials are this weekend.
We might have to
there's
do
a lot of
some trials podcast, mate.
Yeah, we will. And just in general, the NRL SuperCoach type chatter on the internet, it's really bulking up. People are talking about it again, and we've actually been getting quite a bit of good feedback lately, which has been really, really nice to see. I've had a few people jump in the inboxes, and I saw someone say something on YouTube about I was a good addition, and really appreciate it, guys.
Stop making his head bigger than what it is.
We're loving this. We're loving what we're doing.
Love the attention.
And I can't wait.
I cannot wait either. I can't wait to come 20,000 this year as well, and cop from all the positive talk we've been getting the preseason to the sheer abuse that we're going to cop during the regular season. I cannot wait.
Why do I listen to you? Your rank is crap.
Yeah, I copped it last year. Good stuff. Guys, that's going to be 8 for us today. We'll be back Wednesday, and we will be discussing a team I do not know.
North Queensland or Newcastle.
North Queensland or Newcastle. One of those two sides I really don't want to discuss. I'll be live on YouTube on Tuesday night. So tomorrow when you guys are watching this, 7:30, come by and say, hey, it's mostly me talking smack for an hour about your sides and answering some questions. But that's going to do it all for us today. And as we always say, bye for now.
Yeah, for now, guys.
Bye.